Welcome to The Nation. I'm PASHA RAHIM. Tourism continues to be a major force in ASEAN's economic story, opening doors for jobs, investment, and cross-border collaboration. Today, we're joined by Nigel Wong, the president of MATTA and Secretary General of the ASEAN Tourism Association, to talk about where the region is headed. Nigel, it's great to have you with us today.
Well, lovely to be here, as usual.
Awesome. So let's talk about, tourism across the ASEAN region, right? As we all know, ASEAN is home to some of the world's most vibrant travel destinations. Now, in your view, what makes tourism such a powerful economic driver for this region?
Well, Pasha, the keyword is what you mentioned early on, right? Vibrancy, right? So we're actually a very, very vibrant region in terms of the products, tourism products that we have to offer, and for the record, much of it yet unrealized, right? And so there's a lot of promise, a lot of potential for new exciting attractions to surface, right? And given the current trend, everybody's looking for something new. So in terms of being an economic driver, it's extremely important because it is a very low-cost industry to get into, especially if you're the person on the ground, the person running the attractions, the tour guides, the locals who are promoting, very popular now, community-based tourism, right? Anything that's really authentic and back to nature and culturally inclined,
Right.
And for ASEAN especially, it's a destination rich in all of these, and so it has the potential to quickly get people up to that level, create jobs, create opportunities, and generate income.
Right. So I think some of the key sort of features when we're talking about ASEAN tourism is, of course, like you mentioned, we've got a very rich cultural heritage. We're talking about rich natural beauty as well. What do you think is the current outlook for the tourism sector in ASEAN post-pandemic? And also, how quickly is the region rebounding compared to other parts of the world?
Okay, so recent numbers by UN Tourism, I think the UN Tourism Barometer, says that we're roughly at about 84-85% regionally. Now, of course, some countries like Thailand, they've already hit their targets, right? Malaysia is actually well on its way, and Singapore is doing very, very well, especially. But we're roughly at about 85%, but that's slated to sort of reach pre-pandemic levels somewhere towards the later part of 2025. Yeah, so that's where we are regionally at the moment.
Right, okay. So now let's talk about some of the key ingredients to a robust tourism industry within the region. Let's talk about talent, let's talk about cost competitiveness and also strategic geographic positioning. How does that continue to contribute to ASEAN's tourism potential?
Okay, let's look at geo-positioning first, right? Where ASEAN is, it's really, number one, slated to be the next hub of tourism, right? And that's known the world over. People are beginning to look at ASEAN not just as a destination to visit, but they're looking also at the number of ASEANs who, in a very short time, will reach the demographic where they're going to be able to travel and travel extensively, right? And so ASEAN as a strategically positioned destination is really important in terms of connectivity. Right. So airlines are beginning to, in fact, not just recently, but even pre-pandemic. Look at AirAsia. I mean, their hub is really Southeast Asia, ASEAN itself, right? And there are a lot more airlines that are now flying into and out from the region. So we see this big growth in air connectivity. Now, if you talk about manpower and talent, that's the other very, very important part that ASEAN has in its favor, because we have a maturing young demographic who are just beginning to come into the workforce, right? There's plenty of opportunity for work, especially in the tourism and hospitality sectors. And so we need to focus a lot more on developing this demographic, all right? Getting them prepped, because at the end of the day, even with AI and tech and all of that stuff, tourism is really about people, right? And people are going to deliver that service and product. And with that potential of ASEAN being a major connectivity center, mobility center, with it having a lot of attractions as a destination, with a growing mid-market willing and able to spend, you're going to have people who are able to service, all right, this sector, right? Because it's huge potential coming over the next couple of years.
Right. You talk about people and how important people are, right? So we're talking about human capital, basically playing a very huge role in the tourism experience overall. How is the region addressing talent development and also, that skills gap in hospitality and tourism services, just overall within the ASEAN region itself? And then later on, I might have a follow-up question to that.
Sure. In ASEAN, there has been a program that has been running for quite a while now. I think initially spearheaded by Cambodia. It's called the MRATP, which is the Mutual Recognition Agreement for Tourism Professionals, right? And in a nutshell, this framework was designed so that tourism professionals trained within ASEAN, according to an ASEAN standard, would be able to move quite flexibly within the region, right? Within the tourism industry. So from the hotel perspective, you'd be able to hire hospitality professionals to come and work from other countries and vice versa. Tour guides would be able to go in between countries. There would be a lot more access to talent, right? Some countries will have more talent than others, and this will enable these countries to acquire said talent, and for countries where there were a lot more to then share this talent out with their neighbors, making ASEAN a destination by itself to visit. So that's the MRATP, and of course they have the ASEAN Skills Standard.
Okay, so you mentioned tourism professionals. Just to get a clearer picture of what that means, what are the specific jobs that would be considered as being a tourism professional?
Okay, so there are the traditional jobs, all right, under this particular skill set. So you've got in the hotel industry, for example, you've got housekeeping, you've got concierge, you've got the guys making the food in the kitchens, all right, the wait staff and all of that, right? That's very traditional. For travel agents and tour operators, you have tour guides, tour leaders, you have package designers, you've got people doing ticketing, so on and so forth, right? But this also includes people who drive the buses,
right?
All right, the people who take people on not just the guides themselves, but now what we come to see as hosts, right? You've got people who are now in the AI specialists, for example, marketing specialists, accounting specialists, but who have a bit more training on how the tourism industry works, right? So while these are generic skill sets applicable to almost any industry, a lot of the training is very specific for tourism itself,
right?
So that definition of tourism professional can be quite wide.
Right, so it's actually, we're talking about an entire ecosystem within the tourism industry. Okay, so let's talk about affordability now. For a lot of people, the ASEAN region seems to be a very affordable destination. How does ASEAN itself position as a attractive destination for both budget but also luxury travelers? Because we've got to admit that there are a wide range set of travelers who travel very differently. Some are quite happy to be backpacking, some want a little more class and style and luxury. So how can ASEAN position itself to be able to cater to all sorts, diverse range of tourists?
Okay, I was going to make a cheeky comment there and say class and style, you would know something about traveling that way, wouldn't you?
A little bit.
Okay, it's really quite an interesting question because in terms of affordability, for those who are traveling on a budget, ASEAN is definitely the place to be. I don't think we even need to justify that, right? But in terms of luxury travel, we are actually in that frame of affordable luxury.
Right.
Now, that's not just got to do with the conversion of currency, for example, which makes it very attractive, all right, for people to fly in. I mean, go to Langkawi, for example, all right, St. Regis or the Four Seasons, you're looking at about 1,000-2,000 ringgit a night. But for most travelers who are looking for luxury, that 1,000, 2,000 ringgit a night is actually very, very affordable as far as 5-star luxury resorts are concerned. So that's why we get the term affordable luxury, right? And the saying goes, right, it's how far you can stretch your dollar. So when they come in, they buy these luxury goods, but they're also looking for experiences that may not fall within that range, right? So for the luxury traveler, you've got everything.
All right, so we are going to continue on our conversation. Now we're going to talk about connectivity and also regional collaboration within the ASEAN region, but we're going to go for a very short break and we'll be back with Nigel right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Nampaknya malam ini tidak berpihak kepada harimau Melaya.
Kalau main macam ni, baik tak payah. Aku main lagi baguslah.
Eleh, kau cakap je pandai. Padahal kaki bangku.
Sudahlah. Tak baik gaduh-gaduh. Kalau betul sayangkan harimau Malaya, jom ikut saya. Cantik! Jaringan yang melakukan di situ. Kita berjaya jaringkan gol.
Welcome back. We're talking to Nigel Wong, who's the president of MATTA and also the secretary general of the ASEAN Tourism Association, talking about tourism within the ASEAN region. Now let's talk about connectivity and regional collaboration. Now we all know that the ASEAN region is very accessible from one country to another. With ASEAN's proximity and also our diversity, how important is regional integration? Now we're talking about visa facilitation, for example. We're talking about transportation links and also, perhaps joint promotions. How can we boost travel across member countries? Now, for countries such as ours here in Malaysia to Singapore, Thailand, it's fairly easy for us to travel. There's trains, but perhaps slightly further up north, we might need a little bit more, perhaps a way for us to be able to reach those areas easily.
Okay, that's a tricky question because in terms of mobility, it really depends on within the country, all right? It really depends on what the government of the day is actually doing. So there is a lot more that can be desired as far as land transport especially is concerned, all right? And look, over the last couple of years, many of the countries have put in a lot more money to build infrastructure, all right? For example, the highways in Cambodia now are fantastic, all right? And there is a high-speed train, in Laos, So they're doing this in bits and pieces, but like I said, still a lot to be desired. There are many destinations in ASEAN you still cannot reach very easily. But in terms of ASEAN as a whole, before we even talk about promotions, we need to make sure, number one, that there is that connectivity, all right, and that has to continue to expand. But you hit the nail on the head as well. Accessibility in terms of visa restrictions, all right, or policies. Malaysia's key market till date is still Southeast Asia. It's still ASEAN, right? And this is something like similar to the European Union, all right? We need to nurture, we need to grow.
Right.
So, long story short, ASEAN governments should consider more relaxed policies when it comes to ASEAN citizens visiting and traveling and holidaying within ASEAN.
Right. So, do you think we're seeing enough collaboration among member states, to position ASEAN as a single tourism destination, as opposed to, it's like what you said, when we visit Europe, for example, we tend to go to, Paris, Milan, they do a whole circuit. Are we seeing that trend coming up within ASEAN?
Yes, so we do see various agencies from different ASEAN countries banding together, right, to encourage promotion to a specific area of ASEAN. But in terms of being fully coordinated and integrated, we still have quite a way to go, right? Look, one of the best examples, of course, is what we have here in Malaysia. You've got Thailand to the north, you've got Singapore to the south, and Malaysia right in the middle. Now, that accessibility is fantastic. We can get there by land, by sea, by air, right? But there is still that further potential, right, to market these three areas as part of a single itinerary or a single multi-destination product, right? And like I said, the product is there.
Right.
We just need to put a bit more effort in promoting it.
But also, do you think that we're a little bit competitive because we're like, no, come to KL because we're the best city within the region, and Singapore's like, no, we've got the best food, and we're like, no. Is there that sort of competition even within member countries, or should we be like, you know what, guys, let's work together, let's have everybody come to the region and have a really robust tourism industry within the ASEAN region?
Okay, so while there's this argument of who was the originator of chicken rice, right? It's true. We will always be a little bit competitive when it comes to our neighbors, right? But each country has its own unique selling proposition, right? And for example, we can say that in Singapore is very good for MICE and business events, right? But we can always promote the, how should I put it, the attractiveness of Singapore by promoting the attractiveness of its neighbors, because a lot of long distance travelers, when they come, they will say, look, I've traveled so long, right? I just don't want to be in one destination. Let's see what else is available. Now, this is not just in terms of Singapore, but Malaysia will do the same. So we can say, look, if you come to Malaysia, you've got all these wonderful things you can do, which you can't find anywhere else in ASEAN. But at the same time, I'm working with my neighbor to say, look, after you visit KL, it's just a short trip over to Thailand, or over to, if you want sun, sea and surf, party vibes. Or there's, the more sophisticated neighbor down south, head down there for a bit more shopping. And this actually doesn't detract from our competitiveness as a tourism destination. In fact, it actually makes it more enticing.
Right. Yeah. So, we should move away from the argument, well, it's debatable, but let's continue on our conversation. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere. Let's talk about the indirect impact and also, the broader benefits of tourism, right? So it doesn't just impact hotels and airlines. We're also talking about, smaller economies or smaller communities benefiting from tourism. Now, can you share more about, how these indirect economic benefits can bring this indirect tourism, can bring benefits to the local communities? We're talking about small businesses, the SMEs, and we're talking about, other supporting industries that perhaps we don't see in the bigger picture.
Okay, so tourism is essentially really a consumption industry, right? People come here with the intent to consume. Whether it's a product, whether it's an experience, whether it's air transportation, doesn't matter. We're here to spend money, okay? So people are inclined to spend. Now, tourism also covers many touch points when it comes to tourism itself. Everything from the people who cook the food and all the way down the supply chain to the people who eventually import it into the country or grow it in their fields, right? So it has very far-reaching impacts on the rest of the other industries around, all right? Now, that being said as well, for the local communities, it's especially important because while it's actually low cost for you to get involved in the tourism activity, the benefits of the returns are very high because of that influx of dollars, especially foreign currency into a particular community, right? And so for this particular group of people, it is especially important. And for ASEAN, it's important because this is the kind of economic driver that's going to, at a very low cost of entry, help raise the standard of living, help raise the standard of income, revenue for people who are not urban-centric.
Right.
All right. And these are the guys where most of the attractions are based. Right. That's the authenticity that people are looking for. It's the people of those communities who can provide that, and so they're going to benefit from it.
Yeah, there is actually, when you think about it, a lot of spillover benefits that the community can get from the tourism industry as a whole. Now let's look at Malaysia's role and also MATTA's efforts. Now, from Malaysia's standpoint, how is MATTA contributing to regional tourism growth? And also, how are you positioning Malaysia as a key player within ASEAN?
Okay. Now, as far as MATTA is concerned, we've always had very strong ties to the ASEAN community. So we're also a member of the ASEAN Tourism Association. And what we do between the different national tourism associations, we sell our countries to one another, right? And this actually has the effect of promoting intra-ASEAN travel, right? So we do a lot of that. Overseas, though, we actually promote, MATTA makes it a point to promote not only Malaysia, but ASEAN as a whole, as part of the ASEAN community, as to why people need to fly all the way from Europe, down to Malaysia, and spend. Most of them spend 21 days or more within the region, right? And so we do this as part of what we do for MATTA as well. But where MATTA is coming up and really emphasizing is on the potential for ASEAN as a new sustainable tourism destination. So the key thing here is we have a lot of natural eco-based products, right? A lot of our forests, our seas are as yet untouched, unblemished, right? And this is something that MATTA is actually doing to promote Malaysia, number one, of course, I'm Malaysian, as one of those jewels, all right, for sustainable tourism, green tourism within the region, but also ASEAN as a whole, because it's not just Malaysia, we're connected, and there's just so much of that within all the 10 ASEAN nations put together.
But of course, emphasis put on being on Malaysia being the hub where people come in first and then travel out from Malaysia.
Malaysia first.
Malaysia first, always. Perhaps you'd like to share with us any upcoming initiatives from MATTA, or maybe perhaps the ASEAN Tourism Association that you are most excited about. What can we look forward to?
Okay, sustainability is something that I really love. Not just the idea of sustainability, but actually putting your hands to the task. Walking the talk. And so what we're particularly excited about here at MATTA is not only promoting Malaysia as that sustainable tourism destination, but actually getting involved in helping our members, which are travel agents and tour operators, get educated, understand the importance of this of sustainability and how that's going to be extremely important within the next 5 to 10 years, and more importantly, how they, our members, and the organization itself can be a part in helping to develop this narrative amongst not just tourism stakeholders, but amongst the local communities, the people with new products and new attractions, to also get on board this early. So we're ready for when the tourists come and visit.
Right. Okay. So MATTA has celebrated 50 years recently. Congratulations on that. That's a remarkable milestone, I must say. Just reflecting on MATTA's journey of growth within Malaysia's tourism industry, what does this 50 years mean to you personally, Nigel?
Well, 50 years is a long time, and we've actually come through 50 glorious years. Not all happy. We have blood, sweat, and tears. But because of the efforts of the last 50 years, MATTA is a very strong organization today. And for me, what's exciting is not the past 50 years. For me, what's exciting is the next 50 years. Right? So we're at the point in time. It's really exciting. You've got new products coming up, new challenges like sustainability, climate. You've got new frontiers to tackle like AI, for example. But all of these things hold so much potential for the tourism industry at large. And so for me and for MATTA, it's about how we're going to harness these new tools, these new resources, to see how we can push tourism much further, especially for Malaysia, within the next 50 years.
All right, one last question for you, Nigel. What will define success for ASEAN for us to be a global tourism powerhouse?
Well, ASEAN has everything it needs to be that, really, right? So for us at this point, we just need to be, I suppose, a little bit more organized, right? A little bit more, share a similar vision, and not one that's going to change every year a new ASEAN chair takes over. There needs to be a long-term vision, a long-term plan, right? In order for ASEAN to really move forward in this particular industry.
All right, amazing, Nigel. We really appreciate you taking time to speak to us today. And your perspective definitely has shed a lot of light on the critical role that tourism plays in driving sustainable growth and also deeper regional integration across ASEAN, though a lot of people may not realize that. So that wraps up this edition of The Nation. I'm PASHA RAHIM. Thanks for watching, and follow us for more in-depth conversations on topics that matter. Take care.